Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from SimpleProgrammer.com. Just finished my run today, 10 miles. Got it done early today. And I was thinking about something actually. I did a podcast interview, and when one of the hosts introduced me, he said that I was the freest man that he knows. I thought that was an interesting thing. And I was thinking about, I've talked about freedom a lot. You can check out some of the videos. I think I've done at least 2 or 3 videos on what freedom is, defining it in various ways. But as I was thinking about it, and as he was summarizing what he meant at the end of the podcast, guys that do that podcast, they've got a good podcast and a really down-to-earth podcast. But as he was summarizing it, and I was thinking about how I would define freedom today as succinctly as possible, right? I've sort of distilled this over time. I talked about, true freedom. I find freedom in the ability to constrain myself. Like, that's where real freedom lies. But I wanted a more succinct definition. So this is what I've come up with. I've been thinking about this a little bit, which is that freedom is essentially this. This is how I define freedom. Is the ability for you to do what you will. And I know that seems like a very simple definition, but for the most part, doing what you will is not just what people will let you do. That's like a very low level, a very surface level of freedom. Mostly what you'll find in seeking out and finding true freedom is that what it comes down to, I'm gonna run across this street here. What it comes down to is you being able to execute your own will upon yourself. So, if I said, a good example would be if you said, hey, I want to lose weight, I want to go on a diet and get in shape, and you're unable to do that, you don't have freedom. Like, no one may be preventing you from doing that, right? You may have the financial means, you may have the time, you may have whatever resources are available. No one's constraining you from doing that. No one's force-feeding you food. But you lack the discipline within yourself to do it, so you don't enjoy freedom. Same thing, you say, I want to write a book. I want to, achieve this goal. Anything that you conceive in your mind that is your will, that you're unable to do, whether it because someone externally blocks you, something prevents you, you want to have $1 million, but no one will give it to you. You don't have that, right? That's okay. Or you're locked up. You're literally, those are but the deeper levels come from yourself, right? What is it that you are stopping yourself from being able to do to execute on your own will? And so a totally free person, the more free that a person is, right? And that's I've talked about this before. This is perhaps my highest value in life is freedom, right? So the more free a person is, really, beyond that surface level, it gets down to always how much discipline they have, how much can they actually constrain themselves, how much can they tame themselves. I was listening to a really good book. I'll have to do a review on it. It's a very, very controversial book called So Said Zoroaster, and some of you recommended it, so some of you are like, oh man, that's awesome, and then other of you are like, don't read that book, John. Oh, don't read that book. But he says in there, that the man who cannot control himself or cannot obey himself must obey others. And I think that's interesting, right? Because that's really the core freedom, right? If you think about that, if you can't obey yourself, you're going to obey others. If you don't have the ability to give your own freedom to yourself, you're going to be at the mercy of others. And so if you're in the situation now where you're being forced to obey someone else, you might want to think about, is it because you do not have the ability to obey yourself? How disciplined are you? How much are you able to actually execute your own will and execute your own freedom, right? It's interesting when we say that other people are holding us back and that other people are limiting our freedom, but then in reality, if we had that freedom, if we didn't have those constraints, you have to ask yourself, would you actually be able to execute on your own will anyway? And for most of us, the answer is no. So I'm always going towards that goal, trying to attain higher degrees of freedom. That's what this channel is about, if you haven't figured it out already. And I would love for you to join me on the journey. Just click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and click that bell if you want to make sure you don't miss any videos. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.